Hello, welcome back to my channel and to my Fighting Fantasy Gamebook retrospective. And now we've reached Book 14, Temple of Terror. I always enjoyed this adventure when I was a kid, kind of a rollicking fun adventure. It sees Ian Livingstone return to his happy place of Allansia in the fantasy world after his Mad Max adventure with Freeway Fighter. And so much at his happy place that he actually goes back to the world of Forest of Doom. The whole start of the book is almost a replay of Forest of Doom, where you meet up with Yaztramo the wizard in his house built in an oak tree. Incidentally, that beginning of the book kind of really annoys me, actually. So there you are, you're having some beer with some dwarves in Stonebridge, right? Yaztramo turns up. He's walked through Darkwood Forest, which we're told in Forest of Doom is this incredibly dangerous place. He just walks through, says, hey, come back to my place. And you walk back with him, and you have no problems at all, which kind of makes Forest of Doom seem really stupid. Anyway, so you go back to Yaztramo's tower, and just like he does in Forest of Doom, he gives you lots of things to take with you through your adventure, and they're magic. Now, those of you who've been following this series know I love magic, right, in this series, as I did in Citadel of Chaos. By the way, if you're going to get the magic, get the Create Water and Open Door, because if you don't, you're going to be stuffed, because you desperately need those spells. And then you set off. There's this kind of young wizard who's gone off to this desert city of Vatos. And somehow everyone's really afraid of what this young wizard's going to achieve, even though he's not actually achieved anything yet, which is a bit odd. But then you've got to get there before him and get these 5 dragon artifacts and all the rest of it. So the first part of the book is taken up with getting to Vatos. What I quite like about this is there's 2 routes to Vatos. Usually Ian Livingstone has one path that you have to follow. That's kind of true in this book. But the 2 routes that you can get to Vatos are so different. It adds a bit more textured gameplay, I think. You can go via, the sort of City of Thieves, Port Blacksand route, or you can hitch a ride with an eagle, But you get to the desert, basically. Then you trek through the desert. It takes a bit of a while, I think, trekking through the desert. It gets a bit dull. And then you get a sort of second Yaztramo turns up in the desert, who's this big fat bloke in a tent. And he sells you all these random items that you can choose or not choose, which don't seem to have any real purpose. And then they just sort of randomly can affect one monster later on and not another monster. I don't really know why. There's this big creature like a little eye that floats through a corridor. And as long as you show it an onyx egg, then it disappears. Why? I don't know. Anyway. Then you get to Vatos. Now, when I first played this game as a teenager, I liked this idea of this lost city in the desert sands. It's got an Egyptian feel to it. I think that's a very sort of romantic and mysterious and enigmatic setting for the game, right? And what I like is you get into this city and the first person you meet is this bloke going, bleh. It's called the Messenger of Death, and he's got ooze coming out of his gob. And it's hilarious, right? So what it is, this young magician, Malbordus, he's sent the Messenger of Death to you, right? And what happens is the Death says, I have marked you. Bleh. Right? And then what happens is if you see the letters that make up the word death throughout the rest of the game, you will die, which I think is a brilliant idea. So you're sort of going along and you look up at a grating and then you see the letter H and oh damn, I've seen the letter H. It's quite funny. There's one brilliant bit, right, where you come to this door in the wall and it's got like a sort of slot to put a penny in, and it says, do you want to put a gold piece in the slot? And if you do, it goes up, goes ding, and it says T. I just thought that's really funny. And there's another one where there's a dark room, and you go in and you think, do you want to cast a light spell so you can see the room? You think, yeah, because I can't see anything. Then you put the light on, and there's a little letter A at the end. I think that's a brilliant idea. It adds a little extra dimension to the game. But basically, you've got to go through Vatos, find these dragon artifacts. You find one pretty much straight away. And then you get to the end scene. Now, the end scene is really funny, actually, right? So you have to break into the temple of this kind of high priestess called Leisha or something. And when you first break in, she's there and she's being fanned by this servant. It's quite an amusing illustration. You have to kill the servant. Leisha runs off. So you're running down the corridor after her. Make sure you talk to that poor dwarf. Don't run after Leisha, talk to the dwarf, right? So you're running after Leisha. And then, suddenly, Malbordus appears, and he comes up out of the ground, like that bloke in Phantasm. You know, he goes, hello, like this, which is quite amusing. And Leisha runs off. And what's interesting is, you never defeat Leisha. She just runs off. What happened to Leisha? Is she going to come back in another adventure? Very strange. And then you face off against Malbordus. It's a fairly straightforward adventure. I think Ian Livingstone sort of tossed it off in between other things that he got to do. It's never going to be one of the best adventures, but I think it's quite a lot of fun. I think The Messenger of Death makes it for me. And I like the setting, I like the desert setting. Wonderful, iconic cover by Chris Achilleos. Much better than his cover for Space Assassin. I think one of the best covers in the range. That's the guard you meet, the lizard guard at the gates of Vatos. Incidentally, there's one bit I like in the adventure where you go out this door and you find yourself outside Vatos in the sunshine. You can see some footsteps. And it says, do you want to follow the footsteps? And you follow the footsteps. Then someone closes the door behind you and you can't get back in. And that's the end of your adventure. I quite like that idea. Anyway, so that's the wonderful cover by Chris Achilleos. Now, the interior illustrations are done by Bill Houston. I think this was the only adventure he did for them. Now, when I was a kid, I loved the illustrations for this book. Looking back, I'm not quite sure why I like them so much. They're a bit daft. They're a bit sort of scratchy in places. I like The Messenger of Death. Some of them are wonderfully lurid. I do like his impressions of the city of Vatos in the desert because they remind me of the woodcuts in Roman Polanski's brilliant film, The Ninth Gate. And there's some cribbing of Dune as well. So I'm rather fond of the illustrations. They're not the best in the series, but there's a lot of fun. There's a lot of fun in them. They're sort of wildly macabre and childish at the same time, which kind of sums up this book, really. Temple of Terror. I enjoyed it. One of the sort of second-tier books in the range. Thanks very much.